Nearly 5,000 years have passed since the construction of the Giza pyramids, but unlike most ancient structures, they still surprise both tourists and scientists. How were such incredible buildings constructed? Who moved the massive blocks? And what interesting things do we still not know about the Egyptian pyramids? Ancient Egypt was one of the many civilizations that believed in the afterlife. In fact, this belief was one of the key characteristics of the ancient Egyptians. According to their beliefs, life did not end after death. The body died, but the soul continued to live in the afterlife, where vitality returned to the body. According to the ancient Egyptians' faith, after the resurrection in the afterlife, the deceased had to overcome many obstacles to reach the kingdom of Osiris. To successfully overcome these difficulties, the Egyptians had to learn various spells during their lifetime that would protect them after death. It can be said that the ancient Egyptians took their preparation for the afterlife very seriously. This included learning all the spells as well as the direct preparation of the body for burial. In this case, we are talking about mummification, which was one of the most important characteristics of ancient Egypt. Since 3400 BC, with the help of the high art of mummification, the ancient Egyptians prepared the bodies of the deceased for their journey to the afterlife and to remain preserved forever. The remains were soaked in natron for 70 days, after which the embalming continued, which consisted of many different technical steps. Finally, the body rubbed with incense was wrapped in linen bandages soaked with oils and resins. This is why mummies have such a dark color. Amulets were placed between the bandages to protect the deceased. The Egyptians believed that after all the trials had been completed, the deceased would appear before the court of Osiris, where it would be decided whether they could reach the fields of Aru, which are similar to the Christian concept of paradise, or if their soul would be destroyed. But of course, the most interesting part of ancient Egyptian burial culture was the pyramids, which served as the tombs of the pharaohs. The Egyptians built the pyramids to honor their pharaohs and ensure their immortality. I believe you've all heard of the pyramids in Giza. These are symbols of Egypt and attract millions of tourists every year. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is still considered the only remaining wonder of the ancient world. Many people believe that there are no other pyramids in Egypt except for the ones in Giza, but this is not the case. According to official data, there are 118 different pyramids across the country, many of which are quite spectacular. For example, the Step Pyramid of Djoser is the oldest surviving stone structure in the world, built in 2650 BC. The Bent Pyramid in Dashur is characterized by its unusual cut shape. The notorious Pyramid of Khufu is considered the largest of all the Egyptian pyramids. Initially, its height was 146.6 meters, but it has now decreased to 138.75 meters. However, even this is still considered very tall. To help you imagine its size, let's compare it. This pyramid is as tall as a 46-story building. This is simply incredible, especially considering that the pyramids were built in the 3rd millennium BC, nearly 5,000 years ago. What materials were used to build them? The main material used in the construction of the pyramids was limestone, which was used for both the inside and for the decorations. The pyramid's outer casing was made of dense white Tura limestone. In addition to limestone, other materials were also used, such as red granite, which was used to decorate the interior walls, while the floors were made of basalt and alabaster. The basalt was brought from the El Fayoum oasis to Giza, and the alabaster came from Luxor, a city in Upper Egypt on the eastern bank of the Nile. According to some scholars' calculations, the average weight of the blocks used to build the pyramids was about 16 tons, so at least 45 workers would have been needed to move them. But how were the Egyptian pyramids built? What secrets do they hide from us? And how did people manage to create such masterpieces? And most importantly, who was behind the construction of these creations? Building a pyramid typically took 20 to 30 years. For a long time, it was believed that the pyramids were built by slaves under the orders of the pharaoh. This belief was shaped in society after the historian Herodotus presented his evidence, claiming that the Pyramid of Khufu was built by 100,000 slaves who worked continuously. This myth was reinforced by various films about ancient Egypt that emerged in the 20th century, shaping the beliefs of the people. But it's time to forget these myths because slaves had nothing to do with it. Many scholars have now confirmed that there simply couldn't have been that many slaves in ancient Egypt involved in a construction project. Furthermore, 100,000 people couldn't have worked at the same time. Some wrongly believe that the Jewish people built the pyramids in Giza. This is also an incorrect assumption that spread in society for a while. Only relatively recently, after archaeologists discovered the tombs of the workers, we got to know that Jewish people were not involved in the construction, as they appeared much later in the territory of ancient Egypt. Most researchers agree that specialists were involved in the construction of the pyramids. The first evidence that slaves were not involved in the construction of the pyramids was discovered by accident. On April 14, 1990, an American tourist was riding in the Giza Plateau. A few hundred meters south of the Sphinx, the horse broke through a previously unknown mud brick wall and threw the tourist to the ground. The wall was part of an ancient cemetery, the cemetery of the pyramid builders. Following this discovery, 30 large tombs and about 600 smaller tombs were uncovered. It is likely that the warriors were buried in the larger tombs and the workers in the smaller ones. Later, another section of the cemetery was discovered, with 43 burial sites. According to the inscriptions, the higher-ranking officials were buried here, including the supervisor of the pyramid's side, the supervisor of the architect-engineers, the supervisor of the masons, the supervisor of the workers, the supervisor of the craftsmen, and the supervisor of the royal works. The pyramid builders were buried next to the pyramids, with their own tombs. Furthermore, the study of the remains showed that those who participated in the construction received the same level of medical care as the nobles. Would slaves have been treated this way? According to scientists, the construction of the Pyramid of Khufu was carried out by two teams, a main team and a support team. The main team consisted of 4,000 workers who were masons. They worked in the quarries and lived with their families in a village next to the pyramid. The support team, consisting of 16,000 to 20,000 members, built ramps, transported blocks, managed tools, mixed different solutions, and handled food. They lived in a camp near the main team's village. Scientists believe the main team worked year-round, but the support team only actively participated in the construction until the end of summer. In 2016, archaeologist and Egyptologist Yukinori Kawai spoke to the public and said that there is a huge amount of data about the exterior of the Pyramid of Khufu, but not enough about its interior. Many theories suggest the interior of the Pyramid of Khufu could shed light on the construction methods. The Egyptologist believes that if the interior of the pyramid consists of horizontally arranged blocks, then straight ramps might have been used for the construction. It's worth noting that it is not allowed to climb the pyramids, but there are exceptions. For example, Yukinori Kawai is allowed to climb the Pyramid of Khufu for scientific purposes. He often takes pictures from the top of the pyramid, based on which 3D models are later created. In 2016, Kawai and other experts thoroughly examined the Pyramid of Khufu using modern technologies. The project was directed by the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities. The team of experts used infrared thermography, three-dimensional reconstruction, and radiography to study the pyramids. The data obtained from the investigation were turned into a 3D image. As a result, the team of scientists discovered two cavities within the Pyramid of Khufu. One version suggests that the cavities may be empty and have remained since the pyramid was built, while another version posits that the cavities could be previously unknown tombs. One of the most interesting questions regarding ancient Egypt is, how exactly did the workers move the heavy stone blocks? Physicists from a Dutch university have proven that the stone blocks used to build the Egyptian pyramids were moved on wet sand. This conclusion was reached after they studied an ancient fresco. The fresco, dating from the 12th dynasty, shows 172 people dragging the alabaster statue of the high-ranking Egyptian official, Jehuti-Hotep, while one man pours water directly in front of the wooden sled onto the sand. This gave the scientists reason to believe that the stone blocks were moved in a similar manner. Dutch physicists conducted experiments. They created models of Egyptian sleds and measured the pulling force required to drag them over dry and wet sand. It was found that wet sand reduced the required pulling force by half. The sled slides more easily on wet sand because the sand doesn't accumulate in front of it, unlike when it's dry. Considering that the blocks were pulled by several dozen professional workers at once, we might conclude that building the pyramids was not as incredibly difficult as we once imagined. Of course, it was hard work, but the construction methods seem quite logical. Isn't that fascinating? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, Pharaoh Khufu believed he would live forever, and in a certain sense, he was right. He left this world 45 centuries ago, but his name will be remembered for a long time, thanks to the last remaining wonders of the world. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content exploring the world's greatest mysteries.